Hi, I'm Christine, and before we move into the technical portion of our project, I want to give a brief overview of our project goals, our team structure, and how we manage the workflow from start to finish. Our project is a small grid-based game designed to demonstrate core programming concepts, UI design, and asset integration. The goal was to create a functional prototype that showcases both technical implementation and visual design. We worked under several constraints, including limited development time, coordinating schedules across the team, and ensuring that all assets, visual, audio, and code, were compatible with each other. We also needed to follow course requirements for documentation, testing, and presentation. Our team consisted of 3 members. Christopher handled the programming and architecture quite admirably, and I created the art assets, UI mockups, and documentation. And I also coordinated much of the project management. We applied skills from several ICT courses, including web development, UI UX, project management, and scripting fundamentals. Professional skills like communication, scheduling, and documentation were also essential. Our final deliverables include a functional game prototype, a complete written report with appendixes, and a full video presentation demonstrating the technical, artistic, and organizational aspects of the project. As of now, the core programming is 90% complete, the art assets are about 80% finalized, and the documentation is 90% assembled. We are in the final integration and testing phase, preparing the project for submission. The remaining challenges include final polish, last-minute bug fixes, and ensuring that all assets integrate smoothly. We're also verifying that the presentation meets the time and content requirements. With that overview in place, I'll now turn it over to Christopher, who will walk you through the technical implementation and the coding behind our game.
Hi, this is a presentation of our progress so far for the senior project for ICT 435. My name is Chris Ortega, and I am working on this project with my teammate, Christine Hauser. We have decided to create um, a match 3 game. So there are a lot of different things that go into tackling something like that, that we felt would demonstrate a lot of the things that is being looked for in this course, as well as it does require a lot of intense collaboration and teamwork between me and my teammates as well. So we thought it would be a really good idea to kind of put that into effect. Not only is the game itself a bit of a challenge, but so is um, the additional things that go with that. We decided to implement authorization authentication and have basically a sort of landing page, if you will. So users would have to not only go to our landing page, but they would also sign up for it. Now, it is heavily pushed for mobile, using a PWA as well as which is a progressive web app, and it's designed to be mobile first. I wanted it, me and Christine wanted it to be more user friendly, and really optimization and speed and performance were going to be the main things. Of course, the main challenge, the primary challenge is to make it a fun app that that works, is bug free, or at least minimal. But also, our secondary challenge was to make it fast, highly optimized, be able to use on basically any device, So that was our main goal, but it's a heavy emphasis on mobile first because that was the plan. So to use this, we decided to go with, from an engineering point of view, we decided to go with Next.js, which is superior for many different reasons. And then since we are trying to make this web-based and as cross-platform and optimized as possible, we decided to also go with Phaser which is a library specifically designed as a game engine for JavaScript. So we decided to keep everything in the JavaScript ecosystem, and of course PWA gets past a lot of hurdles that native applications would present. Plus, native applications would really kind of put a roadblock on any iOS development due to Apple's questionable nature for apps to get developed on their platform. So the PWA, especially due to their loss of that lawsuit with Epic Games, really has opened the door for us to do something like this. So without further ado, there's a little bit of a demo I do want to go through here. And then after the demo, I will kind of go more in depth on some of the decisions that we made. So the main thing here is going to be our match 3 game. So this is kind of the landing page. This is still definitely an early rough draft. A lot of these things are going to be more optimized. Christine, kind of the separation of our responsibilities is Christine is really more on the UI UX side of things. She's very good at that stuff. And also anything to do with assets, art, those are really her jurisdiction, and she's very good at that. So me and her are still discussing a lot of things in terms of how we're going to lay this out, what is going to be most aesthetically pleasing, things like just different concerns that we have as she's going through. So we're still in those stages, and a lot of the game assets that we do have already available are they take a long time. Like most game development, art and things like that are usually what takes the longest by far, and the most expensive part of the process. The actual programming and things like that are actually the easy part of the job, and that's been no different on this one. So Christine has had her hands full with that, but she's done an incredible job with what she's produced, and this is something that we're still in the process of. So we wanted to keep it simple. So we have the name, right? I just called it Match 3 Arena for prototype right now, but we are probably most likely going to go with, I think Crimson Crush is what we're going to be going with. Obviously, we'll be redesigning this. Christine already has plans for a very good-looking Crimson-themed layout here, which we will be implementing once we decide, what goes with what here. But one of the big things that we also wanted is we wanted it to be a little bit competitive. So there will be a leaderboard. Now, there was, at least I had the thought of having some plans of multiplayer involved, but just due to the fact that this isn't like we're not actually trying to make a game, for profit or anything like that, and the fact that I've built a lot of things, in the past, but I've never actually built an actual multiplayer game. So I built things that require a lot of work with networking and quite a few different programming languages, but I've never actually built a game. Is very different because everything's in real time, and I could have used WebSockets and things like that, but just for the scope creep was getting a little bit big. So, but I still wanted it to be a little competitive and kind of have a feel of multiplayer, but also still be a game that can be completely client-side and played offline. So the leaderboard is what came in here. It's really one of the few things that is network-based. So in order for a player to actually get on the leaderboard, they would need an internet connection. So they could play the game as much as they want offline, because it's completely client-side. Everything else is server-side, but the game itself has to be client-side due to user input and things like that. But the leaderboard isn't. So somebody could technically play offline all they want, but their name will not be put on the leaderboard until they actually have a real internet connection. And to prevent anything like client-side cheating, everything is signed. So everything is basically encrypted with the signature. That does get checked server-side. So it gets checked once actually in our server-side code. But I'm pretty sure, like I'm 90% sure I want to move it into the actual backend. So I want it to be checked with an RPC function in our database. So just to have an extra layer of security for the leader, but because it doesn't take too much time to shift that logic over there. So it won't take up too much of my time to do something like that, and it does add an extra layer of security. Now, what I didn't show on here, and I'm already signed in here, but when the player signs out, you have an option to sign in if you've already created an account. So if you haven't created an account, you would just sign up right here, which I've already done previously, so we can do that again here. So I'll just do test 2 since I already did test 1, and we'll do @test2@test.com. Now, one thing I haven't implemented yet because the game logic was taking so long is, but I am definitely going to be implementing it over the next couple weeks, is some type of data. I can't remember the name of it right now. Validation. I have to have validation. So there is a library called Zod, which would cut down a lot of time, because regular expressions and things like that are kind of a bit of a pain. There's a really good library called Zod that's pretty industry standard that I'm going to be using to add that in. So this would have to be a certain character. It can only allow certain alphanumeric characters. Has to be within a certain range in terms of length. Same thing with email and password. So those things. So normally, this wouldn't. If this isn't a real email, it wouldn't be allowed. And by that I mean like something at gmail.com, things like that. So those are things I'm going to implement in the next set of updates. Password too, but for right now I'll just type in password as the password. And we'll register the account. So everything's good to go on this front. And now it says here, test. So we're logged in. So, and if you see, we'll come back and log out again. There's our credentials, exactly the same. And then I'll sign in, and we'll be right back where we left off. So that's how that works. On the back end, we are using Supabase, which is just a free and open sourced version of Firebase. But Supabase uses Postgres, which is something I'm extremely familiar with. It also uses Express, Node and Express on the back end. So those are things that I'm very familiar with as well. Cuts down a ton on time instead of building out an entire back end just for a little match 3 game that we're not even really, it is technically in production, but it's not something that it's not a real product, right? So Supabase saves a lot of that time, but it will be in our Supabase backend. So we have an actual table back there. I believe we call it profiles, that it's actually saving this all to. So that's where that comes into play. Now, here's the game as well. So as you go through the game, you'll click on this. This is something else that me and Christine are going to have to decide is how this is going to look, because right now it doesn't look very good. But then again, I am just testing right now. Most of the game logic is already working. There would be a background right here as well. This is just kind of like a filler background. And this is all through Phaser. So Phaser is just an incredible game engine. It is limited. So if, for instance, me and Christine's first idea was like a farming simulator. The idea, me and her are gamers, so we had like most gamers who want to make a game, like their ideas are much bigger than what realistically is available in front of them. So that's how that was. But Phaser, for instance, for that would have been it would have hurt. Now Phaser is extremely optimized, so it's really fast. It's got so many benefits to it, but there are some things that it's really not good at when the scope of your game starts to get pretty intense and complex. A more intense game like that, like a farming simulator, for instance, would require a more traditional game engine, like Godot or Unity or even Unreal. So that would take, again, that's pushing the scope of this project. So Phaser for a match 3 game, almost perfect. Anything kind of within that realm, match 3 games, simple core game loops. Even platformers. There have been some complex games made. Probably the most complex game would be Vampire Survivors, which was a really big hit. It's a kind of like a roguelite bullet shooter, bullet hell game. but they actually had to switch. I believe they switched to Unity, if I'm not mistaken. But they had to. The developers did have to switch because in a game like that, there's just way too many objects. And the unique challenge with games is they have to be updated all the time. So I've optimized our code for our splash page and all the things that are just pure Next.js server side rendering. I've optimized it to really to be minimal in terms of when it's actually making calls. HTTP request to our database. A lot of it is actually static. It just doesn't look like it because I am using a mix of local as well. So there's some things I'm actually saving to the user's device because me as a developer, I'm a huge fan of local first. And I know that's kind of where a lot of things are moving nowadays. Is a lot of things are moving to local first because it's fast, it's extremely fast, and I try to minimize what we truly need the user and the client to actually communicate with the back end for. But a video game, it's doing that about 60 times a second. So it's extremely, there's a lot going on with the game. So Vampire Survivors really got to the point where it couldn't use phaser anymore because there was just too much going on every second. It was starting to run into a lot of bottlenecks, and Unity and Godot and all these other game engines, they're design. I mean, they have huge teams of people over many years that have been working on that to optimize it and make it better and better and better. So that's why Vampire Survivors moved there. But Phaser is a very good one, phenomenal game engine. So as you click here to start the game, it does load in. Now these beautiful little. Let me zoom in on these here. Let's see. Well, it's not letting me zoom in any further. But if I could zoom in further right here, you would see how gorgeous these are. Actually, let's see if I can. Should be. Yeah, there we go. So this is actually done with 256 by 256 pixels. I do need to clean up a few things, but they're very high quality sprite sheet. So we went with the sprite sheet, pretty industry standard as well. For optimization. So sprite sheets are definitely the way to go for most games, especially 2D games. So actually this is one PNG or WebP file that is compressed, but it's compressed at render. It's not actually compressed at like the actual image itself is at full quality. So full resolution. Oh, that's what happens when I wait too long. The timer ran out. And here's a little bit of the music that plays during the game as well. We're going to add more sound effects now. If you match right here, as you can see, a little bit of the games come in here. I do have to cut up that audio. We ran into some issues with audio because we were expecting things to be delivered that weren't delivered, but I just went in and started doing the audio myself, but that's something I'm going to have to keep working on as we keep progressing. Now, the point of the game is for the user to hit, it's very similar to Candy Crush. The point of the game is for the user to be able to actually hit their score. So they're going to have levels here that they have to hit, and then every certain amount of levels, things change. There's new blocks that get added that, for instance, can't be deleted, so they're just an obstacle in the way. Sometimes things will shift from a score to, like, you have to get, like, 5 match 4s instead within the time limit. So there is a time limit here, but I don't have it displayed because I forgot to put that in there. I've been focusing so much on the logic, but there's actually a timer here and it keeps moving. And then sometimes, maybe when for example, the user gets to level 50 and the actual board changes, maybe it's a pyramid or a triangle or it's a cross or something, it just adds a new layer of difficulty. Now everything's pure RNG. I was thinking of going with permutations, but again, the scope starts to get a little bit out of hand. Plus, there's something about true RNG that's exciting, right? It is a bit exciting. So for true RNG. Plus, ours is combo based too. So I'm gonna try to hit a combo here if I can. Yeah. So that's only a 2 combo. Here's a 4. Let's see. Here's a 5 right here. So in a 5, see, like right here, there's a bug I'm gonna have to fix, but that's supposed to be a 5, and the logic I was programming in was that the whole board gets deleted, and the user gets a tremendous amount of points in that situation. So that's what we're looking at here in terms of how the game is so far. Now the combo keeps going up and up and up. So as it keeps going, it's all pure RNG. The only thing that I program that's not RNG is the initial render of the level. So the initial render will not allow like a match to be made. Like this right here is a bug I'm gonna have to look at, because what I've programmed in there is that there should not be a match on initial render. So that's the only time something isn't pure RNG. Everything else is definitely, see, like this is the initial render and there isn't anything here. And then also the bonuses for instance, we have bonuses for 4, for 5, and for doubles, but a double has to be 2 or a match 3 that's side by side. So that's a double. Those are the special combos. Now those ones have to be done by user input. So for instance, if you get a match 5 but it's after a combo, so you match 3 and then the next blocks get rendered in and they're completely RNG and it just starts creating combos. Well, if any of those combos happen to be a match 5, it'll just count as 5 regular blocks. It will not count as the actual bonus points for a combo, because they have to be user input generated. And the reason for that is in the later levels, we did want to add a little bit of complexity in terms of like, okay, now you have to specifically match. You can only do matches for the blue, right? For the blue ones. So we wanted to add a bit of strategy in the later levels, and so that's kind of what the thought process is behind it. Is that if the user understands that only user inputs count as actual special moves, it gets them to start thinking a little bit more strategically. But the first levels are intentionally designed to be real simple, real easy, and just the way that the RNG works with probability, they are likely with a board, with an 8x8 board. This is a really big board for a match 3 game. They're going to get a lot of matches, right? Like a lot of combos, and it's the biggest one I've seen testing is 10 combos. And that, the user, I programmed the game to like stop, it locks user input. So the user has to wait until the combos finish. And then it's, it gets a little exciting. And I've also programmed it so the sound effect, that little ping sound effect, it gets a little bit higher in pitch every combo. So it's, ding, 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 ding. It keeps going up like that. So it gets the user a little bit excited for that. But again, these, all were drawn by hand from Christine using Krita, which is a phenomenal open source software for creating assets, and you can create all sorts of stuff in there, but it's really, really great for a lot of these things. So this is kind of how the game works in terms of the actual logic and what our plans are for the future as it continues to grow. And then once you're done with the game, of course, one thing I did forget to mention is we will be implementing basically lives. So I'll probably get rid of this moves track because it's not really that important. You're not getting points based on moves or anything like that. I will keep the logic though for the later rounds when we're looking for, instead of moves track in general, it'd have to be like match 4s on blues, something like that, for the really late levels that are like very, very challenging. But here I want to add not only the timer, but also lives. I want to have a certain amount of lives, and me and Christine will have to decide how the player can gain lives too. So we don't just want them to only loot. They get 5 lives and that's it. We do. Probably it might be a good idea to maybe reward them. Maybe something that's extremely hard, they're able to actually gain a life. Basically have an extra mulligan there. So that is pretty much the game. Now the rest of it is just logic that I have to go over for what we're working with on the back end. But that's pretty much it. It seems a little, and as you can see, it's not optimized yet for desktop. But when we go in here, we have iPhone. This is the smallest screen, which is an iPhone SE, even to the bigger, iPhone 14 Pro Max, as well as Samsung Galaxies. So this is what it was going to look like for those. But that's pretty much the project in terms of like what it's going to look like, the scope, where we're at right now. But that's pretty much it in terms of what we have right now. We still have a few more things we got to get done, UI UX wise. I got to fix a lot of server logic, and then there's some things with organization in terms of separation concerns that I would like to improve a little bit. But those are all of our projects here. So simple Next.js, mostly using Phaser, and Supabase on the back end. So if you do have any questions, definitely feel free to contact me or Christine, and we can go over it more. But the rest of it's pretty much laid out. Christine's got us on a really good schedule, and we're just going to keep plugging away. And we're right now we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule, so everything's looking really good to be able to have this finished on time. As long as we keep our scope creep under control. Scope creep is it's a clever beast that will sneak up on you, that's for sure. But thank you for your time, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for that riveting look under the hood of our project, Christopher. Now, to close out our presentation, I want to highlight the visual design work that went into the project and how the art assets support the overall gameplay experience. The visual assets were created in Krita, including the tile set, color palette, and UI mockups. My workflow focused on clarity, readability, and consistency, ensuring that each asset aligned with the game's grid-based structure and our NMSU color palette. The tile set was designed to balance simplicity with visual interest. Each tile needed to be distinct enough for the player to recognize, but also cohesive when placed together. The final result is a cohesive visual style that supports gameplay and enhances clarity. The art assets integrate smoothly with the programming logic, creating a polished and functional prototype. Throughout development, I worked closely with Christopher to troubleshoot alignment issues, adjust tile sizes, and ensure that exported assets fit correctly within the game engine. This iterative process helped refine the final look of the game. Thank you for watching our presentation. We hope you enjoyed seeing both the technical and artistic sides of our project, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our work.